Yellow.
Mellow,
Welcome to Jenny and Chels. This is Jenny.
and this is Chels. And today we have creepy on creepy on creepy for you. Just creepy stories from the No Sleep
Oh,
subreddit.
these stories, like these people, the stories are good. So some of them today, like one of the stories are gonna be a summary. So there's a much longer version. That's the original story, but as always, we leave the link and the name of the redditors, so you can go and enjoy the longer reads with like all the little gruesome details.
Yes. And I'm going to do my best to give you all the key parts and some of the details. The story is called Every Year on Christmas Eve, My Parents Drug Us, and I found out why. And so we're set in a small town, some small rural town. We don't know exactly which state it is in, which location. But our protagonist, our main character, let's call him Opie, is just realized that his parents drug them on Christmas Eve. Every Christmas before 9 p.m., so between the hours of 8 and 9, they get given eggnogs, and their mom tells them, hey, you don't want to be awake when Santa comes, so you have to take these pills, because if you're awake, he won't give you the gifts, you won't get the presents. And as when you're a kid, of course, when presents are on the line, you want to make sure you do whatever you can to get them. But as he got older and towards the teenage years, you realize this is nonsense. Okay, I want to see why it is that you guys keep drugging us. So instead of swallowing the pills as he usually does, he kept it under his tongue. And he had tried before that to kind of approach his friends and be like, hey, do your parents like give you Santa pills on Christmas?
Drugs.
Do your parents give you drugs?
Mm.
But they just laughed at him. They didn't take it seriously. So it was like, okay, I cannot tell anybody about it. It looks like this is some like confidential family thing. Let me just figure it out on my own. And that's what he did. So he hid the pill under his tongue, and he just waited. He waited. He was like, oh yeah, I'm going to figure it out. And as the night progressed, he just heard his parents snoring and his little sister sleeping, and it's like, oh, that's weird. I thought they were doing something. Why are we that's really odd. I don't get it. And so he kind of just was looking around the house until he saw something on outside. He saw movement outside, and it was odd to him because their town supposedly gets a lot of snow. They had a lot of snow, and as if you've been around snow in the winter at night, you know that it's very quiet. It's very bright outside and very quiet. So seeing anything would stand out more. And that when he noticed the movement, he was intrigued. So he looked out the window and he saw what he described as those really spidery looking things. They were very lanky monsters. They were monsters, and they were going down his one of his neighbor's chimneys. And he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was kind of freaking out, and he thought maybe it's the because he had smoked weed with his friends earlier in on the day of Christmas Eve. So he was wondering maybe it was laced with something and it was creating some hallucinations. um and yeah, so he thought that was that at first, but then he saw them going down the Smith family's neighbor's chimney, and he realized it was real when he heard their daughter scream. They had a daughter. Her name was Maggie, and they were trying to drag her up the chimney, and he could tell by the screams, and they had two of them went down and were just using their lanky, I don't want, not legs, not feet, just, yeah, members to grab her. And the issue is, if you've seen chimneys before, they're not made for humans to be dragged out of easily.
No, I thought that's where Santa goes. How does Santa get in then?
How does plump Santa, well-fed
Hmm.
Santa goes? That's the
Very
magic.
well fed.
I
Hmm.
I don't want to figure it out. And but he did, and he realized that was not right, because by the time they were able to drag her out, she did not look right. And he the scream stopped, and in his head he said he hoped she was dead, because no corpse, no human body that's alive should look the way she was looking. And as he saw that, he just freaked out. He ran to the sleeping pills cabinet and just started munching them, and realized that they're gross as hell. Because you're not supposed to chew them, you're supposed to just swallow them. And yeah, so he eventually fell asleep. And he just, the next morning, he found himself being violently woken up by his dad shaking him past noon. And he was so happy. It's like, yes, maybe it was just all a dream. And it was Christmas morning, he was ecstatic, and he saw his little sister, and it just felt normal. He felt great, until he looked on the ceiling, and like to the window. His eye caught something, and he saw like a patch of blood on the neighbor's roof, not ceiling, on the neighbor's roof. So he sipped and then realized that something was wrong, and he asked his parents, hey, have you seen Maddie, or have you heard anything from the Smith? And his parents kind of gave them each other a weird look, kind of, when there's something they don't want to tell you, but they don't want to look alarmed either. And they're like, they played it out. They're like, oh, Maggie, we'll check on her. We'll ask her parents how the Christmas is going. Yeah, and but he was still worried, because he knew he heard the screams and he saw her body. So he was wondering where's the police, where's the firefighters, where the newspaper. A child gets taken on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve should be making more news, more like raffling some people. So he goes, Christmas break ends, he goes back to school. And it's his first year of high school, and he's still baffled by the fact that no one seems to have realized that Maggie is gone. Nobody, the cops didn't come in the couple of days. Everyone's acted like nothing happened. And it started taking a toll on him, started to kind of question his own sanity, until he started checking the newspaper daily. And he saw that there was a little obituary, a tiny one, for her in the newspaper. So and that's when he realized he wasn't crazy, it actually happened. And at that moment, he just cut it out and kept it kind of as a sanity check. And just kept everything under wraps. And March came, he was still not doing well mentally. His birthday came and went, and summer vacation, until and around that time, his friend decided, hey, do you wanna go for a smoke? Do you wanna smoke some weed? Because it's a boring town, there's not much to do. And when they did, they're like, hey, so we need to talk to you. And we care a lot about you. This is really an intervention, because they were just joking and stuff, right? And they're like, yeah, no, we need to talk. And we noticed that you lost your job, your car isn't even insured because you lost your job, your grades are slipping, you look like you haven't slept in 5 years. Like, what's going on? Talk to us. And he was having a really hard time, because he didn't want to worry. And he kept telling him, like, don't worry about me, don't worry about me. And his friend told him, hey, we think you're going to shoot up the school, honestly. Which,
Not the school shit ups.
yeah. Like, I could see that this is America. So
These days, you can't even be weird. If you're too weird, they're like, yeah, he gonna shoot up. He gonna shoot up
some point.
something.
Hmm. Something's fishy in here. But he just came clean and he told them everything. Told them about the sleeping pill, and at first they were laughing, but as he progressed into the story, they realized that he wasn't joking. And they hadn't really noticed that they were getting drugged by their parents too, until he described how you feel the morning after when you wake up, you
They
know.
were all on that
And
good, good.
exactly, they're just enjoying the high, not trying to figure it out, here for a good time, not a long time. And so at that point, he just was bawling his eyes out. He was really like, he realized that after he was bottling this up for so long, like almost a year now, because it was closer to Halloween, that it just felt good and to release that. And one of his friend was close to Maggie's older brother, and he said that, yeah, they just moved without any, like, on without any notice. They just upped and left, and maybe that has something to do with it, like with the fact that nobody it the whole town acted like Maggie never existed, and they then came up with a plan. He was going to try to reach out to the brother and see if maybe they knew something. And after he did, nothing really came out of it, and in fact he ended up getting blocked everywhere. And he didn't let that stop him, because he was, at that point, he was determined to figure it out, like, what is happening, why are these people, like, why did Maggie get taken. So even though it's a small town, their newspaper had gotten a grant a few years back, and they started to digitalize all of their issues. So he went back as far as he could and started looking for disappearances on Christmas Day, right? And again, wintertime, people come and go. A lot of people have health issues, or fall, or take their own lives due to depression, which is okay. So, I mean, not okay. Taking your own life is not okay. That's not like, which is
Uh, which is what
Mhm.
happens, which is the normal, nothing out of
Yes.
the norm.
Thank
The
you.
shit that happens, people live and people die.
You get what I mean. So after that, he decided to make a list of all of the families who had lost people in a similar way to Maggie, on Christmas Day, but yet it didn't get any attention from the newspaper or the police department, and it was seemingly kept quiet, kept under wraps. And they made a plan. Halloween was coming up, so what they were going to do, or what he had designed to do with his friends, was going to those houses, like pretending to go trick or treating, going to each house and asking them about the creatures. So he made a drawing and everything. It wasn't the best drawing. And when he presented the idea to his friends, they were like, we're teenagers. Don't you think they're going to think something is fishy? Like, why are we not out partying and trying to get drunk, and instead we're trick or treating at our big age, you know? But eventually they decided, you know what, it's fine. Okay, let's give it a shot. Like, also on the night of Halloween, they decided to spend the night. They all told their parents they're going to spend the night at one of them's places, and they had a sharp curfew. And they just had like really really easy costumes, the typical vampire, ghost.
Ooh, so they really tried to Scooby Doo this
They
thing.
really did. Let's find the monster.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Right.
It's totally a Scooby Doo moment.
And they wanted to make it a little legit and actually do trick or treating on some of the houses. Some people kind of looked at them like, aren't you a little too old for that? Shouldn't you be trying to get drunk somewhere, partying or whatever? And some people like, oh, that's kind of cute. Like, instead of doing all that, they're actually trying to do something fun. And it's funny because one of their friends' family is super religious and hated the idea of Halloween or trick or treating. So to get his parents to accept, he was like, I'm going to spread the word of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and hand out pamphlets. And they let him go. They're like, oh my goodness, such a good son. He's trying to spread the gospel, you know?
No way they bought into that.
They
No way they bought into that. Oh my god.
crazy.
That's like the classic lie.
I
Classic.
know, right? You really think you're a teenager? I mean, I don't know. Do some teenagers do that? Because personally, I did not see it. But so they started, and then they decided let's start on the list. You know, they had about 10 houses of families who had lost people to the creatures. So they started, and then the first lady that they asked, because he had made a drawing of what they look like, you know, and she kind of looked she looked at it weird, and she was like, no, I don't know, and just shooed them away, you know. And all of the other houses that they asked to kind of gave them a similar explanation, the same rundown, you know. And they were, at this point, they were getting pretty disappointed, pretty not sad, but kind of beat, feeling let down because they were not getting anything, and they're just eating their worries away with the all the candy that they were getting. And they reached the last house, you know. But when they did, they just kind of were surprised. There was no because it's a small town, you know, so usually everybody tries to participate in Halloween. But that house had no porch light. All of the blinds were closed, or the light, I did thought the lights were off, you know. It just looked really dark, maybe no one's home. So in the last attempt to get some type of answers, at the back of his writing, he wrote a little explanation of what it was and the question that he had, as well as his phone number. And he went in. The door was one of those that had the slots for mail, you know, like those older style. And he put it in, but it was so tough that he almost snapped his finger out on the way back to close itself.
Oh, the little mouse slot.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, it's those ones that you push instead of the one that just have the little gap.
Exactly. Yep, because it was on the door,
Okay.
the front door. So he put it in, and almost lost a finger or two. And as they were walking back, you know, as they were making their way to their friend's house to have like a little sleepover or whatnot, they heard the door open, and the lady was like, hey, come back here. Like, there was an old lady in the house, and she was like, hey, get over here, you know. And it was kind of low and raspy, so they were a little shocked. And they went in, you know. They're like, oh, okay. So they went in, and she shut the door. And once they were in, they realized, wait, it's not that nobody was home, it's just that she had the thickest blackout curtains ever.
I need to know where she shopped.
Right. I know. That's exactly what I was thinking too. And no light was coming through, but there were lights inside. And they also noticed the door was a heavy grade steel door. It's not the kind of door that you could break through, you know. You would need to like dynamite it or something. And they also could not help but notice the chimney was cemented. So she clearly was not using it, and she blocked it for some reason. She had a reason too. So she sat them down, she offered them some water, some tea, and after that, her first words were, so you've been awake on Christmas, I see. And they all kind of, their face kind of sunk, because some of the people in the friend group were thinking, you know, maybe their friend was just having a bad trip, you know, maybe he made it all up, or you know, because they did smoke together quite often, not necessarily every day, but often enough that it's not impossible. But now that this old lady was telling them, oh, so you were awake, and yeah, they knew it wasn't a lie. And they also noticed that to the side of her chair she had a shotgun. The lady was ready, like whatever. Yeah, whatever was going to come through, she was ready to shoot it
She's
down.
serious. That's what everybody in this town
Hmm.
needs to do then. Have a shotgun instead of taking sleeping pills.
I don't.
If every household
I
gets
don't
one
know.
out of them, I think it will be a breakthrough.
Well, funny you mentioned one because we're going to learn more about them.
Oh, okay.
Hmm. So she asked them when's the last time he saw it, and he said last year, and he saw what he thought the creature like was like the spidery thing take Maggie up the chimney. And she told him, wow, you're really lucky because nobody who saw them lived to tell the tale. And so one at that point, one of the friends was like, wow, so they're real? And the lady was like, yeah, they are. And they were curious, like, how have the bodies never been recovered? And she told them there are a lot of graves in this town that are empty, a lot of urns that are empty because the families never recovered the body. And those monsters apparently come in groups of 3, and each time that they come, the first house that they get, like the first awake child, because the adults know better, that are usually the first child that they get, they are happy with that and they go. And she also asked them, like, how come you were awake? And he explained, oh, that's because my parents gave us sleeping pills, and I figured out it was sleeping pills. And she was like, wow, in our days you used to get an infusion,
Hmm.
ma'am, or alcohol, like.
Oh, alcohol is a more fun way to just pass out, I guess. But
Exactly.
also, do they only take adult? Do they only take kids, or are
Well,
adults
that's
fair
what
game too?
I have the answer for you,
Okay.
because the old lady, figured out about them, because, and also figured out they only take one, because one Christmas night, her little brother had to be on some medicine, right? And the parents didn't realize that the medicine was counteracting with the infusion that they were giving them to sleep, and it actually kept him awake. So she heard some commotion, and because the alcohol that night must not have been strong enough, so she was old enough to get some alcohol, but the little brother was getting infusion still, I believe. And he woke up, and so did she when she heard some ruffling. So she went downstairs to kind of like take a look, and she saw them take her little brother out of the house through the chimney, and pretty much break his bones, and just the whole thing, the same thing that happened to Maggie. And she was so scared, but silent, like kind of in shock. And that's how she figured, like, she was awake, but they didn't take her either. And she confronted her parents about it, and they told her the story. But one of her brothers did not believe it. He was like, this is bullshit. Y'all are just making it up. You're telling me some magical creature came and just took my little brother, and I'm never gonna see him. This is nonsense. I'm staying up next Christmas, and they're going to have some explaining to do. And he did try that, and he didn't make it. They took him, and the family was made to clean his blood off the roof together.
But wait, but he was older? Like he was an adult?
Yes, he was an adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Small
everybody's
town
fair
things,
game.
you have like 15 kids.
Wow.
Not
Okay.
quite, but yeah. And after that, they believed when they had to clean his blood off the
Oh,
roof.
yeah. I would just take like half a bottle just to make sure I'm out.
Yeah, I. It's tragic.
And I feel
when you
like
think about
alcohol
it.
is not safe. Like This alcohol is not safe because you can still wake up even if you're drunk. You can still wake up if something is loud enough. So that's being
Exactly.
sloppy, okay? That's very sloppy. You can use the alcohol to take the painkillers. That's like the extra, a little buzz over the buzz, but not one.
I know. But yeah, that was that. And as she was explaining to them what happened, one of their friends, he was just losing his mind. Like all the candy that he ate was starting to come up, and she saw it. She was like, "The bathroom is in the hallway on the left," and just got up and did its thing. And yeah, eventually came back, and he came back right when she was actually saying how explaining how they were cleaning the blood off of the roof. You had to go right back. Exactly, which is understanding. And as she talked, she showed them like this box full of pictures that she had, and they're like, what are those pictures? And next to some people there was a red dot, and each dot represented people in their family that got taken over the different generations. And through the box they also saw a weird picture. It just looked like a roof with like some glitter on top, and they asked like, what is this? And she was like, that's how they show in picture. They don't show, they just appear. You can see like some type of glittery shadow maybe, but they cannot be photographed. So how convenient, you can't even go and show people, hey, look, I'm not crazy. But they were drawings better than the one that he had, and he recognized it. He was like, yes, that's exactly how they look. At that point, they were just shocked. They were still they were not processing it the way they thought they were going to. I don't know how you can process that kind of information being a teenager in high school.
Yeah,
But the
me.
lady told them, yeah, that's it. Now skedaddle, go back. Yeah, that's all I had to tell you. And just make sure none of you stay awake on Christmas. And she handed them some Reese's pieces, some Reese's cups, but they took out of their bag and gave her some candy. Because as she was explaining it to them and reminiscing on her little brother, she also was tearing up a little bit. And she said herself, like, even though it's been 60 years, she's still not over it, because how could you sing something so traumatic? And yeah, they just felt it was fair. She had given them an explanation, some type of closure, I think, and it was only fair to try to give her something back. So at that point, they just they just go back to their friend's place, watching the movie. Can you guess what movie they decided to watch?
Scooby Doo.
The Little Mermaid.
Hmm.
They could not watch anything scary, because that's usually what you do on Halloween. They
Yeah.
just ordered some pizza and watched The Little
They
Mermaid.
they're living Halloween, so I don't think they wanna
Yeah,
overdo it, because
they
shit
don't
is
need an
actually
extra.
coming to life. Shit is actually real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even though it happens on Christmas Eve.
Hey, what a messed
That
up day
Yeah,
for it to happen.
I
Like, what a
know.
messed up day.
When you're supposed to be happy and celebrating time with your family, that's or just, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely sad. And so after that, they actually stopped hanging out a little bit. Like, I think they all needed time to process on their own and figure out how to take it in. And yes, until they noticed a new family moved in. So Halloween is October 31st, right? Between that and December, in the month of November, a new family moved in. And usually, because it's a small town, you would have like the neighbors or a couple people in the town bringing gift baskets, welcoming them, giving them like a fake little plastic key to the city key, just being hospitable and jovial and welcoming. But they noticed there was none of that for that family.
No apple pie, nothing.
No.
By the way,
Nothing.
I really thought that's what just happens in America. When you move to the neighborhood, your neighbors are supposed to come knock on the door, with some casseroles. But I've been cheated.
So did I.
I've been cheated. In my whole,
Yeah.
I've never had an apple pie from a neighbor. They couldn't even go to Walmart. They couldn't even bother. Like,
But would you eat it if they gave it to you? Would you not think, oh, maybe there's something?
I would have appreciated it. I would have been like, you know what? They're right. It's just like on TV. Oh my god, you
Okay, I
know.
do agree with you though that TV lied.
This is it. Yeah, right. They really lied. I really thought I was in the country. I was in transit before coming to
Yeah,
America because I was
because we
about
did live
that.
in.
Just letting y'all know. So my neighbor, if you can hear this, I'm waiting for my apple pie for all the places that I
It's
ever
never
moved
too
at.
late.
Thank you very much. All right. Yeah. keep
Only for
moving.
you to find out you don't like apple pie, but you know.
Side note, I actually do love apple pie. And they better
Okay,
get the good
fine.
ones. You can go to Whole Foods, just a suggestion, but keep going.
Oh wow, now there are requirements. See, this is why they don't do that. But yes, these people did not get apple pie, didn't get anything, and the friend group realized, oh, they're going to sacrifice them because, like the old lady had said, they only take one person per the first person, the first awake person that they get is that. And I'm like, okay, so you're assuming their kids are going to stay up or anything, but either way they did not tell them anything, and they notice, okay, that's what's going
These
to
kids
happen.
are evil.
Well,
But at the same time, how do they not know that is something that the real estate person tells you when you sign the lease? How do they
because
know?
the
Because
whole
they've never
town.
known it themselves. So why would they just assume nobody in the town is gonna tell them? Or
Well,
does
that's
everybody
the
just
thing.
find out on their own?
Kind of, but the people, a lot that town, because it's a small town, a lot of the families there have lived there for many generations. You know, it's the kind of place that you either move to because it attracted people since it had quite a bit of oil opportunities. So they will move there and then move out after realizing that there's really not much to do. You know, in a couple of years they just skedaddle, and so that's kind of what the dynamic was. And these new people that moved in, I think the people in the town were just like, well, we don't really know them, I'll rather sacrifice their somebody in their family than the Smith that I've known my whole life, you know, which is cruel. But I'm not going to lie, I kind of understand. I kind of understand human nature can be a little coward, and those kids were having none of it, which is why I
Okay,
fucks with them.
I understand on the kids' part if they're using it as an experiment, but for the rest of the town, it doesn't make sense. Because in that case, that means the spider-looking monsters need to get somebody before they go. Because if it's just
They
that
do.
somebody's awake and everybody's asleep, they come, they do the little security check, everybody's asleep, and they leave. But if they have to get somebody, that means that they need to have someone before they leave. If not, they would just take
That's
somebody that
okay.
is asleep.
That's a good question. That's a good point. We don't know at that point. We don't know if there's always been one person awake, and I think that's why they assume that's all they take because there is no guarantee. Like, yeah, the town could make sure nobody is awake, that everybody
Right.
sleeps, but they don't. And the kids are actually against the town because they don't think it's right, and they're actually devising a plan so that they all four of them stay up and are going to try to retaliate. And that's where the story ends. We don't know what they do, but they decided, they said they're going to try to fight back. So wish us luck. Like, wow.
This is the end of the story.
This is the end of the story.
No way. No, 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 no. We need to go back. Need to go back.
I know.
This cannot. Oh my god, I have so many questions. Like I was
I
still
know.
waiting for more explanations.
There is so much more we don't know. So much more.
No.
I'm definitely going to try to keep an eye out for this because I feel there might be a second part coming based on the way it was left open ended. So I'll keep you posted, but that was it.
Okay,
That
this
was the
is evil.
story.
I don't know why you picked this story, but I feel like this is a direct attack. Cause
You're
now,
welcome.
like in my dreams, I'm gonna have to complete it in my dreams, or should I say nightmare? Cause, shoot.
When you do, let me know. I would like to know the I'm very interested as
All
well.
right. Well, that was a really good one though. Like it kept me thinking. Like I kept just imagining the whole thing and what like the spider-looking things would look like.
Hmm.
You know.
And yeah, again, we're going to post the link to the original story because it's much longer than the summary I just gave you, and I definitely recommend going and reading it because it reads really smooth and well.
Okay. Well, thank you. That
Oh
was a good one.
yeah.
And I have a story too, and it's a really good one. Like I think
Ooh,
you're
hit
gonna love
me.
this. Alright, so
Yeah.
it's also from the No Sleep Reddit, and it
Mhm.
reads, "My wife received an invitation to a store opening. I don't think I will ever see her again." That is the title.
Oh, okay. Okay. Ooh, this could go so many ways. Let me hear it.
Okay, let's go. Alright, so the story goes, Darren. Darren, did you know they opened a Target in Owensville? My wife Deborah asked me excitedly. Grab the car keys and let's go check it out. I rolled my eyes. It was almost 6 in the evening and I had a long day at work. The prospect of an hour's drive there, 2 hours of shopping, and an hour's drive home wasn't appealing. They didn't open a damn Target in Owensville, I replied, curtly. Only about 2,000 people live there. Why in the hell would a multi-billion-dollar corporation open a store in the middle of a sticks in a town that isn't even big enough to support a McDonald's? Squealing woods on tile penetrated my ears as she pushed the bar stools away from the kitchen counter. Her footfalls approaching my chair were heavy like a pouting child's. I should have known better than to start an argument with her about Target. She dropped something from above me, a glossy red mailer advertisement sailed through the air over the top of my head. I looked down on my lap to see the familiar red and white logo. The cluster of red vested employees smiled up at me from the shiny cardstock. Target would like to welcome you to our newest location in Owensville, Kentucky. Bring this ad to the register for an additional 10% off of your first purchase. She worshipped the damn place. We lived in Lexington, Kentucky, and she made the rounds between all three. The clearance queen, she called herself, that would buy clearance item by the carload from any Target with a reasonable drive and resell them on Amazon. Retail arbitrage. I think that's what she called it. Don't get me wrong, she made some decent money with it. We were middle-aged and empty nesters when she started. Her entire life had been devoted to raising the kids. When Dustin and Jessica left for college, she struggled a bit, steered around the house like a caged animal. I pushed her to find a hobby. It was a few years until I would retire. Most of her friends worked. Then, that's when the Target clearance spree started. Owensville is almost an hour away and there are 3 damn Targets here in town, I said, irritation building. Why do we need to drive out to the middle of nowhere to get what we could find in town? My wife went back to the kitchen and started washing the dishes. Every movement she made was exaggerated to show her displeasure. Cabinet closed so hard they were just shy of a slam. Glasses hammered on the counter so hard I expected them to just hear them shatter. She sighed at least 3 times every minute. I wish I hadn't given it. If I would have just stood my ground, maybe something would have been alright. Our family would still be whole. Police detectives wouldn't be stopping by the house every week just for a chat. But I did give in. I agreed to go. Grab your purse and put on your shoes, I huffled, pushing myself out of the recliner. We can go, but no more than an hour of shopping. I've got work in the morning, so we can't fool around all night. She squealed of excitement and ran off to the bedroom. Why the hell did I agree to go? The drive to Owensville was uneventful. NPR news stories played on the radio as my wife fidgeted with her cell phone. While I had been mildly irritated before we left the house, I was almost to a raging boil by the time we got to Owensville. An hour's drive to the middle of the country with my wife, and my wife looked at Amazon listing the entire drive. We had already reached the center of Owensville, and the GPS said there were still 2.5 miles to go. From the overload view on the map, the address was a good distance outside of town, headed towards Moorhead. The location to the store was making less sense at the moment. Are you sure you put in the right address in the GPS? I asked Deborah. She didn't answer, still crawling through her phone. Deborah, I said a bit louder. She looked up at me and smiled. The sweetness of it cooled my anger down to a dull shimmer. I even felt bad for being angry. Her life had changed so much in the last year, and this was something she did to pass some lonely time. Sweetie, are you sure you put in the right address? I really don't think this can be right. Deb leaned over and pulled off the cardstock advertisement from her purse and looked at the address. Reaching over, she pulled the GPS from the dashboard and punched a few buttons. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see a confused expression consume her face. Yeah, she said. It's the right address. The weird thing is the GPS is just corrected itself. It was down to 2 miles and jumped back to 2.5 miles. Still says it's straight ahead on the right though. I wasn't concerned yet, but I was confused. The GPS clearly said 2.5 miles when we pulled out of Owensville onto the dark country lane. We had been on the road for nearly a minute. It could have been a glitch in the software, but it still left me with an uneasy feeling. My eyes darted back and forth from the GPS screen and the darting yellow lines in the center of the road. The mileage was decreasing as it should have, and I felt relieved. Only a mile ahead, we would be there soon. I looked back on the road and looked for parking lots in the distance. You missed your destination. Please make a U-turn when able and head back 2.5 miles. Your destination will be on the right side of the road. What the hell? I said in a panic. The GPS had just said 1 mile only moments before. There was no way I had driven 1.5 miles past a huge department store on the side of the dark country highway and missed it. You've got to be kidding me. I pulled the car onto the shoulder and made a U-turn. As we drove back in the direction that we came, I fluttered with nervous energy. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Was I zoning out while I drove? Was the GPS malfunctioning? Did the damn store even exist? Just a moment before I was going to tell my wife we were heading home, I could see an unnaturally bright light ahead of the wood line. The tops of parking lots light peeked over the top of the forest. I turned to Deborah to voice my concern, but her face was painted with a satisfied grin. I told you we'll find it, she exclaimed with excitement. We pulled around the tree line to see an immense parking lot in front of the brightly lit store. There were maybe 3 cars parked at the far side of the lot. The car returns were empty. It looked like no one had been there other than a few employees. You were all worked up over nothing. I pulled the car into a parking space closest to the door. We got out and started walking towards the entrance. There was emotionless elevator music playing in the parking lot. I looked out towards the top of the lights pole, but didn't see any speakers. None of the Targets in Lexington played the canned music, and it filled me with some strange sense of dread. It was as though it came from nowhere. Even the entrance to the building was strange. While most stores have an entrance directly in the center of the building, or 2 mirrored entrances on each end of the building, there were only one here. It was almost directly at the far right corner of the building. I looked to my left and saw the 3 other cars in the lot were parked all the way to the right. Maybe there was an employee door on the side of the building, but I couldn't see a walkway. There were 4 or 5 feet of glass between the parking lot and the edge of the building. Something about the exterior was off-putting as well. Every other store I had been was a cream or beige color with a few red Owens and a red Target logo next to the store name. Not this one. The entire building was fire engine red. It reminded me of the unrealistically bright blood from the old 80s slasher films. Where there would usually be one Target logo, the building was covered in them. Hundreds, maybe, all different sizes. Some of the larger logos had smaller ones between the red and white circles. A few overlapped. Strangest of all, there was no sign that just said Target. Deb, something about this is weirding me out, I said hesitantly. Let's come back tomorrow during the day. It looks like they could be closed anyhow. Not many cars in the lot. She stopped and turned towards me. An exuberant grin had vanished from her face and was replaced by a set of furrowed brows. Her body was slightly rigid and her head turned slowly from side to side. We drove an hour to get her, and you nearly got us lost twice, she said angrily. Don't you think for a second we're going back home? If you're going to act like an ass the whole time, go wait in the car. I was a bit dumbstruck. Deb was usually soft-spoken and sweet. Only a handful of times had I ever heard her curse. Never at me. She turned and went through the sliding doors at the front of the store, hurt and angry. I went back to the car. For the first 30 minutes, Deb was inside. I scanned the parking lot like a prey animal searching for a hunter. No cars passed on the main road, and no one pulled into the parking lot. There was no motion that I could detect through the glass doors into the building. Occasionally, a light would flicker in the parking lot. Otherwise, things seemed relatively normal. I tried to call Deborah once or twice, but didn't get an answer. Halfway through a lengthy apologetic text message, I decided to leave her alone. She probably needed time to cool off, and Target bargain shopping was probably the best medicine for that. At some point, I fell asleep. It wasn't intentional, but there is only so much aimless scrolling on a smartphone I can do before I start to nod in and out. Once I start to drift, an involuntary nap is always in my future. I had been asleep for around 45 minutes when my cell phone began to buzz in my hand. Startled by the sudden motion, I looked down at my phone. There was a text message from Deb. I thought it was just Deb telling me she was running behind but checking out. Help me. The messaging was confusing. Did she want help carrying something to the car? Was it something she wanted my opinion on? I sent a reply. What do you need help with, sweetie? No response. 3 minutes passed. I tried again. You okay? Another few minutes and still no reply. I'm getting worried. Do I need to come in? I waited for another minute, but she never texted back. Unsnapping my seatbelt, I pushed the door of the car open and felt resistance and a loud smack. Looking to my left, there was a yellow car next to me. It hadn't been there when I went to sleep, and I just had slammed my door into the side of it. There was just enough room for me to slide out, so I wedged myself sideways and closed the door. Bending over, I looked at the side of the yellow car where my door had made contact. There was no dent or mark. With relief, I stood and turned to head towards the door. I was startled by an ocean of yellow cars. There were dozens of makes and models, but each vehicle in the lot was yellow. Almost every single parking space was filled, but there was no one in the parking lot. When I turned to head towards the door, there was no one moving around inside that I could see from here. My stomach dropped. Something was wrong. When I passed through the entryway doors, the store looked like it would, with a few exceptions. All the register was self-checkout with no place for an attendant. Where you would expect to find a customer service department, there was an empty red wall. There was the cart coral, but it stood empty. All the product I could see on the shelf had no writing, just the Target logo and a picture of what was inside. Strangest of all was the lack of people. The only noise in the building was a keyboard version of The Girl from Ipanema. It had a teeny quality to it, as though it were playing from a World War II era radio. Crackles of static pierced through occasionally, causing me to wince. "Hello?" I said loudly. It wasn't quite a shout, but there was more volume to it than my normal speaking voice. I took most of my willpower to not scream at the top of my lungs, but I didn't want to make myself seem unstable if it turned out there were other people in the store. There has to be someone else here, I thought to myself. Why the hell would the parking lot be full if no one was inside? No one answered my call. "Excuse me," I said a bit louder. My footfalls almost seemed to echo as I walked into the store. "Deborah, can you hear me?" Silence. "Is anyone in this damn building?" I screamed. My temples were throbbing, and it felt like the canned music pouring from the speaker grew louder to draw out my calls. I was running down the aisles, looking side to side frantically, passing row after row of generic shelves filled with red packaging. I screamed my wife's name and over. My phone vibrated in my pocket and I pulled it out. Another text from Deborah. "Please, get me out of here." A chill ran up my spine. "Can you hear me screaming for you?" The ellipsis bubble popped up, showing she was typing a response. "No, I can only hear the red man. I'm hiding from them in the bathroom. Please, come help me." I didn't have time to register what she meant by the red man. Breaking into a run, I headed towards the back of the store. As I passed by the clothing section, I panicked and jumped back, slamming onto the rack filled with clothing. A red, faceless man was standing on the platform behind the rows of clothing. Terrified, I pushed myself backward and hid behind the wall. There was no sound of movement, only a teeny music playing from the overhead. I couldn't decide if the red man hadn't seen me. After a few moments, I slowly picked my head around the shelf towards the clothing section. The man stood stoically behind the rows of clothing. Bright lines of light reflected off of his smooth body. He didn't move at all. "It's a mannequin," I thought. "Move your ass and find Deborah." I stood up and walked back around the shelf without the lens of fear. I could see that the shiny red man was only a mannequin. There was no clothes on it yet. Maybe the store opened before they were able to finish setting up the store. As I walked past it, my pulse slowed. I could see the bathroom sign hanging from the ceiling overhead and moved in that direction. As soon as I get Deborah out of the bathroom, we were going to get out of there and blow every stop line between Owensville and Lexington. Then I heard footsteps. When I turned to face the clothing section, I could see the bright red mannequin was off the pedestal. It stood on the bright white tiles on the walkway. In only a moment, the thing had moved at least 15 feet in my direction. There was no one around. "What the hell?" I said out. Slowly, I began to walk backwards towards the bathroom, keeping my eyes locked on the mannequin. It didn't move. But I had the uncomfortable feeling that it was watching me with this featureless face. Sweat began to pour from my forehead. Suddenly, there were steps behind me. I spun around to see another red mannequin standing about 100 feet on the other side of me. As I looked in his direction, I could hear more footsteps behind my back. When I turned, the mannequin from the clothing department was a few feet closer to me. Before I could collect my thoughts, both of the shiny red mannequin burst into a sprint towards me. I panicked and ran into the aisles behind me. Their hard feet cracked on the floor, easily making gain on me. 20 years past my prime, I wasn't used to much physical exertion anymore. I hadn't run more than 2 aisles, and I had already lost my breath. Entering a box of shelves, I turned to face the oncoming red mannequins. Desperate, I searched the shelves near me for a weapon. It was a home goods section, and I began to scan the shelves. At the end of the shelf, to my right, was a cheap-looking red-handled chef's knife. I lunged for it, just in time. As I pulled off the plastic cover, the 2 red men came around the corner. I extended the knife towards both of them, and they stopped. Both of them tilted their head to the side, like confused dogs. They turned towards each other as one of them began tapping a hard finger against their palm. It sounded like Morse code. The other one began making the same clicking noise. They simultaneously turned and walked towards the red support pillar. a few feet behind them. I watched cautiously, scanning the area behind me occasionally. This sudden disengagement made me as nervous as the pursuit itself. When they reached the red pillar, they both turned and placed their back against it, stretching their arms straight over their bodies. They tilted their heads back. The overhead speakers began to increase in volume rapidly. I watched as the two red men fell backwards and vanished into the pillar. My mind struggled to comprehend what I had just seen. The store was quiet again. I could feel the throbbing of my temples intensify. Once I snapped myself out of the momentary daze, I began moving cautiously towards the bathrooms again. I moved slowly, checking each aisle before I passed to the next one, always looking for the red men, always listening for the slightest sign of another person. It felt like an eternity, but finally, I made it to the bathroom hallway. The lights were flickering mildly, and the music dissipated. On the left was the men's bathroom, and on the right was the woman's. I ran quickly towards the door, gripped the handle, and pulled it open. Behind the door was a red brick wall. I slammed my fist against it with frustration. "Darren?" I heard a muffled voice say from behind the brick wall. "Darren, is that you?" "Deborah?" I shouted. "Are you okay?" "I'm right outside. Is there a way to get out?" "No," she whimpered. "But I think I hear." Her sentence was cut short by the blood-curdling scream. I could hear it thrashing and the dull thuds through the red bricks. I screamed her name over and over, but she never replied. The room behind the brick fell silent. Then the clicking of footsteps began to sound at the end of the hallway. I turned my head to see dozens of shiny red men blocking the hall, their heads all tilted in different angles. Some had lengths of pipe in their smooth grapes, while others held assorted kitchen knives. A chain was swinging lazily from the hands of the red man in front of the horde. My eyes darted back and forth between the crowd, the brick wall blocking me from my wife, and the group of demonic red mannequins. I began to cry loudly, accepting that I couldn't save Deborah. Hell, I couldn't even save myself. In resignation, I fell backward. As my back met what I thought was the dead end of the hallway, I was surprised to feel a push bar of the door that wasn't there moments before hit the small of my back. The door gave way and I tumbled backwards, slamming hard against the ground. My vision was swimming as I watched the door marked "Emergency Exit" slam closed. I backed out. When I came to, I was in a field. The tall grass was brushing against my face, and the rustling sound of nocturnal animals filled the night air. My head was throbbing, and for a moment I couldn't recall why I was on the ground. I pushed myself up from the ground and reached forward to grab the door handle, but found nothing. There was only an empty field in front of me. Moonlight reflected from my car windshield in the distance. The building was gone. The hundreds of yellow cars had disappeared. Grass and weed replaced the parking lot. That was 7 months ago. I called the Owensville Police Department, who came to the scene to investigate. They took my statement and looked at me in bewilderment as the story of the now absent Target store became odder with each passing sentence. "There was never been a Target in Owensville," said one of the officers. "Not the kind of place that sets up shop around here." Deborah never returned. She's been listed as a missing person the entire time. Detectives from Owensville and Lexington have interviewed me more times than I could count. They've served me search warrants for the house and both our cars, interviewed every damn person both of us knew. No one talks to me anymore. Our friends won't answer my calls. My family won't talk to me. Her family hired a private detective. I see the greasy bastard following me sometimes. Hell, I even quit my job. They couldn't fire me, but they made sure I knew I wasn't wanted there anymore. I miss my wife, but everyone thinks I killed her. My life is falling apart. But maybe it will change. I've got to call the detectives soon. When I checked the mail today, there was something strange in there. Something that gives me a little hope. It was a Target mailer. The same one Deborah showed me all those months ago, just advertising a different location. Target would like to welcome you to our newest location in Paris, Kentucky. Bring the ad to the register for an additional 10% off of your first purchase. There was the same group of red vested employees smiling at the camera, cheesy grind and everything. Right in the middle was a face I knew so well. She was smiling, that same smile I'd seen 1,000 times. Deborah. And that's the end of the story.
Out of all of this, the first thing that I'm thinking is there's a city in Kentucky called Paris. Wow.
I like that. That's what you got out of all of this story. The Deborah just showed up in the poster for the next one.
Okay.
But yeah, Paris. Can you believe it?
So the reason why maybe that's what stuck out the most to me is because Deborah annoyed me a little bit. Deborah gave me spoiled rotten child for a second, you know? Does that mean I wish that happened to her? No, because that sounds freaking scary. Okay? Because the whole like, oh, you and him too, I blame him a little bit because when they were driving there, he kind of had like a bad feeling when they entered the tire. He had a bad feeling, and yet when she told him like, oh, if you're going to be an ass, just go wait in the car, he left. Like, he, again, trust your gut. I think he knew something was slightly off but couldn't put his finger on it, and I feel like he should have stayed with her then, just be quiet. Like, okay, you can be annoying, but the same way she was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
slamming the dishes and just being irritated when he refused her to go to Target, he should have just stayed with her and just kind of drag his feet and be like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, but it's hard to know for things like that because this is definitely not a scenario anybody thinks about in a daily life or like get themselves ready for. I feel like he could have walked in with her just to make sure everything was well, and then in the middle of the shopping, maybe be like, okay, I'll go back to the car and wait for you to
I
finish if
don't
it's taking
know.
long. Also, it's not really strange because most of the time
That's
men
true.
don't like to go shopping. They would rather just sit in the car and play on their phones when you finish the shopping, especially when she's cranky. He's like, you know what? You go use that debit card,
Okay,
get the
that's
retail
fair.
therapy.
But there are things that were kind of like dead giveaways to me. The parking lot, when they first got there, the parking lot was completely empty. They themselves have said it's a small town. You're telling me the workers walked there? None of the employees that are supposed going to be there drove? Were, okay, there should be one car. Even if it's one car.
It's three cars. Do you think is one car only seven people work in the whole Target? They have different
Yeah.
departments, man.
I don't
Like,
know.
three cars,
Exactly.
yeah. Some people got dropped off by their parents. They're like 17 or 18, man. They
Yeah,
don't have a
like
car.
I don't know. If I go, hindsight. Hindsight is always 2020. I am saying this because I know the story. I'm like, yeah, if I go somewhere and I feel this, I would stay with you. But probably not. I'll be like, yeah, let me just go take a nap in the car. Like realistically, he didn't do anything wrong.
And what I'm thinking of is maybe like the red wall is the exit or it sends you somewhere because even when the two red men were chasing him,
Yeah.
that's where they fell into it and disappeared.
Uh-huh.
So
I would
maybe
have just tried.
well, he didn't know. He accidentally, like he was actually giving up and then fell on it and just found himself outside in the middle of the field. And the whole thing to me, like what I got was that thing literally just appeared when because they passed the same place and they didn't see it. But
Uh-huh.
when the U-turn to come back, all of a sudden the whole building just appeared out of nowhere.
Thank you. That's not suspicious to you? Come on now. It's a big building in the middle of nowhere. How
And
do
it's like
you miss
red
it?
with all of them and the thousands of Target signs on the building. Like that woman has been into all the Targets
Yeah.
many times. She should know
Yeah.
something was off.
Yeah. Not only that, even him noticed, and when you are in the target, it's a new target in the small area. Don't you think there'll be more people going
Yes,
for
even
the
if it's a
grand
small
opening?
town, I think the whole town will be in there. Even the dogs.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. And you don't find it a little again, hindsight is 2020. I love how I'm just like, I would have done this, because of course I know how the story happens. But yeah, like you said, when you're in there in the moment, they maybe didn't think much of it. Maybe just hoping. Maybe people
Yeah, there's
just
not
had
much
other stuff to
people. Or and
do.
also it was late. Maybe people like you just so many maybes there. But he still
Yeah.
had that feeling. Like and he tried to call her a few times, just to make sure like she was okay and apologize and all that. But then,
Yeah.
he just felt like, yeah, it's just another Target run, she will come out and I'll
What could go
apologize when
wrong?
she feels bad. What could go wrong? Exactly.
Not like another dimension could be open for you to be projected
Yeah,
into and never see your wife again.
and also the
You
thing
know?
that made me like really think that it was probably like some alien stuff is the fact that when he used the knife, they were like, that's
Ooh.
new. We can do that. Like they tilted their head. And then the next
I
time
know.
they showed up, the whole crew, the whole gang was carrying knives and chains and like what?
Yeah.
They were like, we can do that?
Yep. I
Yo.
ooh. When you
That
on that part, I pictured it and I was kind of laughing because I could really see it. You're like,
that would be a
oh,
great
that's an
movie.
option?
Like the writer really could set up the scene. Like he was really good at
Yeah,
giving descriptions and like all of this. This is great. I loved it.
I agree.
I loved it. And the fact that
Honestly,
there was so many target signs should have been the sign
mm-hmm.
that they were the target. They were the
Glitching
target.
exactly. Yep, they were the target. Glitching the matrix. How do you say that word? You know
Matrix.
what I mean. Don't happen that often, and like
Oh.
that.
Yeah, well,
But
that
yeah,
was fun. And this one was a little bit of a longer episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know personally I do enjoy like a little longer episodes
me
because,
too. I like being told slightly longer stories. So
yeah. So thank you
yeah,
for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. Don't forget to leave us a review, comments on our YouTube so we know how we're doing and what we could improve. And also on Spotify, we always have the little questionnaire so you can fill out for us. So we know how things are going and what you guys like.
absolutely. And on that note, we will catch you in our next episode.
Bye. Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.